All right, you are going to want to hear this one. This is one of the wildest stories of family, betrayal, and just long-game revenge I have ever heard. It all kicks off with a woman named Amina Reed, an inheritance that comes out of nowhere, and a family that decides to come crawling back at the worst possible moment.
In this quote, right here, this tells you everything you need to know about Amina. This isn't just about defending herself. Oh no, this is a counterattack she's been planning for 10 years. She's not the victim here. She's been getting ready for this exact fight, and she's got the receipts to prove it.
So, let's get the basics down. The whole thing starts a decade ago when Amina's sister Kendra literally just dumps her newborn baby on Amina's front porch and just disappears, vanishes. Amina, being who she is, raises the boy, Leo, as her own son. Now, flash forward 10 years, and it turns out little Leo is the heir to an insane amount of money. And well, that changes everything.
And listen, we are not talking about a little bit of cash. We are talking about $500 million. $500 million? A fortune left by Leo's biological father, a guy that nobody in this family even knew was in the picture, and it's this number, right here, that suddenly makes a forgotten little boy very, very interesting to some very terrible people.
But to really get how we got here, we gotta rewind. We're going back 10 years, back to this one rainy night in Amina's little apartment where a single knock on the door just completely upended her entire life. So picture this. It's 2:17 in the morning. Amina's 28. She's trying to get her own data analytics business off the ground. Suddenly, there's this crazy, frantic pounding on her door. It's not a friendly visit, you know? She's terrified. But when she finally works up the nerve to look, there's nothing. Just a cheap, soaked-through baby carrier sitting on her doormat.
And the only explanation she gets is this: a cocktail napkin, tucked into the handle with words scrawled in smeared eyeliner. That's it. That's the official handover. No apology, no real explanation, just 5 short, selfish lines that dump a human life on her sister's doorstep before vanishing into the night.
I mean, what do you even do in that moment? You're standing there with a freezing, crying newborn baby. You call your parents, right? You call for backup. And that's exactly what Amina did. She calls her folks, David and Maria, hoping for, well, for them to be family. What she got instead was the very first, and maybe the cruelest, betrayal of them all.
After a quick, ice-cold conversation, this is the final word from her own mother before she hangs up the phone. Not "Are you okay?" Not "We'll be right there." Just this: "He is your burden now." In a split second, they chose their reputation over their own family. They chose the tidy little story they could tell their friends over their grandson who was just abandoned. But wait, because it gets so much worse. A few days go by, Amina's still reeling, and she checks an old savings account. This was the seed money for her business. And what does she find? Receipt number 1. Her own father, David, had wired $50,000, Amina's entire life savings, to her sister Kendra just 2 days before Leah was left on her doorstep. They didn't just abandon their grandson, they paid one daughter to disappear, and they used their other daughter's entire future to foot the bill. The next 10 years? Just a masterclass in cruelty. They invite Amina and 2-year-old Leo to Thanksgiving, just to kick them out because Leo spilled some sweet potatoes, calling him too much noise. When Leo's 5 and in the hospital with a 104-degree fever, her mother hangs up on her because she's hosting a luncheon. And when Amina finally legally adopts Leo when he's 8, they get the official notice in the mail, and they don't even bother to show up. A complete decade of silence.
And then boom, after a decade of nothing, the doorbell rings. And who is it? It's Kendra, with some new sleazy husband named Chad in tow. They look clean, they say they've found God, and they're there to see their boy. Amina, who is now a successful CEO and a total powerhouse of a mom, basically tells them to get lost. So 2 weeks later, a guy shows up at her door and serves her with papers. It's a lawsuit. And get this, the plaintiffs are Kendra, Chad, and David and Maria Reed. Her own parents are suing her. They've all teamed up to accuse Amina of fraud, of alienating the child from his quote-unquote loving biological family. Loving. You can't make this stuff up.
So that's the big question, right? Why now? After 10 years of calling this kid a burden, after 10 years of total and complete neglect, what on earth could possibly make them all team up like this? Well, the answer, like it always is with people like this, is money.
Turns out they'd finally figured it out. Leo's biological father, some guy Kendra had a brief fling with all those years ago, was the recently deceased tech billionaire Julian Croft. And he died with no other known heirs, leaving behind a $500 million estate. The lawsuit was never, ever about Leo. It was about getting their greedy hands on his inheritance.
So, this all leads us to the courtroom. The family struts in, they look confident, they've got their stories all rehearsed, and they're ready to put on the performance of a lifetime. What they have no idea about is that they are walking straight into a perfectly laid trap, and Amina is about to cash every single one of her receipts.
Kendra gets up on the stand and spins this whole sob story about postpartum depression, claiming Amina basically stole her son from her. Then her father gets up there and testifies that they're a close family and that Amina has always been difficult and poisoned the boy against them. It's just a disgusting, but honestly, pretty convincing performance.
And then Amina's lawyer gets up, and one by one, she just demolishes their entire story. First, she shows the bank statement with the $50,000 payoff. Then, she plays the audio recording of the "He is your burden" phone call. And for the grand finale, she plays the recording of Amina's mom hanging up on her from the hospital because she couldn't possibly be bothered during her luncheon.
Their lawyer is in a full-blown panic. He sees his whole loving family story going up in flames. So he makes a huge mistake. He pivots, and he starts yelling that this case isn't even about family. It's about protecting the child's legacy, his $500 million inheritance. And just like that, he admits in open court that this whole thing was always about the money.
So the judge turns to Amina and asks if she knew about the money when she adopted Leo. And Amina says, "Yes, Your Honor, I did." The family thinks, "Aha, we got her." But then she keeps talking. Because it turns out Julian Croft, a data genius himself, didn't just die without a plan. A year before his death, he found Amina and Leo, and Amina told him everything. He knew exactly what kind of people her family were. And this, right here, is the final checkmate. Julian Croft saw this exact situation coming, and he prepared for it. He created a special addendum to his will, a contingency plan. You could call it a poison pill. A document that was only to be opened if Kendra or her family ever sued for custody of Leo.
The judge reads it out loud for the whole court to hear. The will leaves the entire $500 million estate in a trust for Leo, with Amina as the manager. However, in the event that Kendra, Chad, David, or Maria Reed ever try to contest custody, 99% of the entire fortune is to be immediately and irrevocably liquidated and donated to a charity for abandoned children.
That's right. The very act of filing the lawsuit to get the money triggered the clause that vaporized the money. Their own greed was a self-destruct button. They played themselves in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. By trying to grab a fortune, they guaranteed they would never, ever see a dime of it.
So, what's the big lesson here? It's that sometimes real strength isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about quiet, careful preparation. Amina's family always underestimated her. They just saw her as the responsible one, the one who cleans up their messes. They never saw her as the data analyst who knew that data is forever. She didn't just endure what they did to her, she documented it. And in the end, that truth was the ultimate weapon.
And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. For a family so obsessed with what other people thought of them, so obsessed with their reputation, their greed ended up costing them absolutely everything. Not just $500 million, but the very last shred of dignity they could have possibly had. It's just a powerful reminder that sometimes the bill for your actions comes due all at once.